My name is Richard Bailey. My age is 95. I'll be 96 next month. I live in Kennesaw, Georgia. Today's date is June 5th, 2018. Tomorrow is June 6th, which is the 74th anniversary of the invasion of Normandy. Grew up in upstate New York in the city of Binghamton. I joined and enlisted in the military a couple months after Pearl Harbor. After the attack by the Japanese on Pearl Harbor, it was the patriotic thing to do. I enlisted in the United States Army Air Corps. We were sent to Nashville, Tennessee for classification. From there, Maxwell Field, Alabama, for basic training. Then to Lakeland, Florida, for primary flight training. Cortland, Alabama, for basic, flying the BT-13s. And then I ended up getting my wings and commission in Stuttgart, Arkansas, flying the Beech twin-engine AT-10. My final rank was first lieutenant. Ironically, the adjutant told me, "Your papers are in for going to captain, but I'm not sure that will come through before your discharge papers do." In hindsight, I wish I had told him to lose the paper for my discharge for a couple of weeks until the captaincy came through, but I didn't. I was went ahead with it, and so my actual final rank was first lieutenant. I got my wings. I went to Barksdale Field, Shreveport, Louisiana, where we transitioned to the B-26 Martin Marauder, and went overseas and shipped out in January of '44. It was based in Braintree, England, about 30 miles north of London. The 322nd Bomb Group was the oldest bomb group in the 9th Air Force, and I went in as a replacement. They were already established at Braintree, England, but I was sent in as a replacement pilot in early 1944. Typically, each plane had a 6-man crew. The lead plane would have 7. They would have a bombardier and a navigator, but the rest of the planes in the flight would have a 6-man crew. There'd be the pilot and co-pilot and bombardier. The top turret gunner was also the flight engineer. The waist gunner was the radio operator, and the tail gunner was the armor gunner. I ended up flying 65 combat missions. 65 was the quota. When I first got there, it was around 40, and they kept raising it, and I kept chasing it until I finally ended up hitting it at 65, which was the full quota, made you eligible to go home. We were scheduled to bomb the invasion beaches 6:30 in the morning, and the troops were to hit the beach at 7:30. But the weather was absolutely terrible, and so we were bombing on Pathfinder. We were above the clouds, and we bombed through the clouds. And the troops were told that there would be all kinds of bomb craters on the beach because of the Air Force. My guess is that the Pathfinder not being very accurate, not nearly as accurate as present-day GPS, that they probably delayed the drop just a second or two, because if they were early, we would have dropped bombs among the landing craft. There was 4,000 landing craft on their way toward the beach. So, and none of our bombs hit the beach at all, but they were 150 to 200 yards inland. The second mission that day was again on Pathfinder bombing through the clouds, and we never. It was only later that we found what the targets were. We just bombed on Pathfinder without really knowing what the target was. The third mission that day was late afternoon or early evening. We had a report that the Germans had a tank division on flat cars, railroad flat cars, about 10 miles south of the invasion beach. So we went in at 10,000 feet, our typical altitude, and couldn't see a thing. It had to be a visual, a bombing run. So we circled back out over the ocean, came back at 5,000 feet, still couldn't see a thing. So we went back out over the ocean and came back in again at 2,000 feet, still couldn't see a thing to do visual bombing. So we went back out again, came back just under the base of the clouds at 500 feet and dropped. We went across the rail yard, as I said, at 500 feet. A number of our planes picked up holes from our own bomb fragments at 500 feet. We did not get the train that had all the flat cars with the tanks on it. The Germans had either moved it or it never made it into the rail yard. It was about 1.5, 2 miles south of the actual rail yard. We knew that there was going to be all the troops going in on the invasion boats, the Higgins boats built in New Orleans, and then there was going to be a heavy concentration of paratroopers dropped all across Normandy. So the ground troops going in and the airborne paratroopers and gliders being towed. We were aware of all that was going on, getting ready, but we were mainly concerned with flying our own missions to support the troops. The Omaha beach was critical, and the troops had to scale a 200-foot cliff up to get up on the level land so they could start inland. So I would say it was critical for at least 24 up to 48 hours before they really they never were comfortable, but at least they had a foothold and could bring in more troops. Well, we were tired, obviously, and he related that the day was over and that the invasion was underway, but we wondered, okay, what's going to be our targets to assure success? How can we contribute to continued success in subsequent days, follow-on days? So we were happy that the D-Day itself was over, but our main concern was the following days and what we would have to do. The Battle of the Bulge started on the 16th of November. The weather was absolutely terrible. It was the worst winter of the century. When the Germans drove through out of the Ardennes, coming through the Ardennes with complete radio silence. They was a complete surprise to the Allies, and they hit the thinly defended American lines, which were manned by inexperienced troops. Many of them had only come through Normandy 3 days before that time. Weather started to break on the 22nd of December, and we started to fly in C-47s with food and munitions. And on the 23rd, they were able to get more in. On the 24th of December, we were scheduled to bomb the bridge at Euskirchen to keep the Germans from bringing up more troops and more armor, and to take out the bridge. So, and we were told that this was going to be a last-ditch effort by the Germans, that it was going to be heavily defended by both flak, anti-aircraft guns, and fighters. We approached and bombed the target, the bridge, and then turned off. And shortly after we turned off, my tail gunner said, "Here they come." And I was flying number 3 spot on the our flight, which is the left wing of the lead plane. When the German fighter came in, why he was that close, I have no idea, but he had to come within 50 feet of the lead plane, right up over his tail. My top turret gunner opened up, and I could see his bullets puncturing the fuselage of the ME-109 when it walked up along, hit the engine, which coughed orange flame and black smoke. And then he came back across the cockpit with his 50 calibers. And the plane kind of shuddered there and then dropped away. The tail gunner said, "He just exploded below and behind us." And then the tail gunner opened up, and he got hits on a German plane. And later he was given credit for probably destroyed. So the top turret gunner got credit for destroying an ME-109. The tail gunner got a probable. And then shortly after that, for some unexplained reason, an ME-109 pulled up between me and the lead plane. We were flying tight formation, so he pulled up, and he couldn't have been more than 30 feet away from us. And why he pulled up to fly formation with it, I have no idea. Nobody could explain it. Intelligence leader could not explain why that happened. But anyway, it seemed like forever he was there, probably 15 seconds at the most. And then he was gone. And then shortly after that, there was a ME-109 that was crossing out in front of us from left to right. He was probably 250 yards out. And my thinking was, if he turns into us, our frontal defense is not all that great. So I slid out about a wing length from the lead plane and hit the triggers on the control column and fired my 4 50 caliber machine guns, 2 on either side of the fuselage. Just my thought at the time was, get some tracer out there to let the guy know that we see him. But so it was probably about maybe a 2-second burst at 800 rounds a minute from the 50 caliber guns. That put about 100 bullets in the air at one time. And all of a sudden there was a puff of black smoke from him, and then he went down about 45 degrees, trailing black smoke, and disappeared into the undercast. Whether he bailed out or crash landed, or whether the plane exploded, or whether he was able to make his way back to his own base, we have no idea. He disappeared into the undercast. But anyway, as a pilot, I was given credit for shooting down an Me-109, the only bomber pilot in Europe to shoot down a fighter. We frequently would take small hits. A piece of flak there that came through the side of the plane. This is a piece of flak being FLAK, an abbreviation of the German words for anti-aircraft cannon. And this is probably from their most deadly anti-aircraft gun, which was their 88 millimeter. So the 88 projectile was about 4 inches in diameter and about 18 inches long, and they would come up at 1,000 feet a second, and the lead bombardier could look down and see the flashes of the anti-aircraft guns, the 88s firing, and knowing that the projectiles came up about 1,000 feet a second, he would, with a stopwatch, for instance, if we were at 12,000 feet, he would, at 10,000 feet, tell the lead pilot, his pilot, turn. And so we would turn one way or the other. But I know left turn. A couple of times I was flying number 2 on the lead plane, and after we turned, right in the what would have been our flight path, the flak was poof, 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 and so we took evasive action constantly. Well, this came through the side of the airplane and landed between my feet on the floorboards and lay there smoking. So we frequently would get smaller holes in the wings of the fuselage, but this was one of the larger pieces of flak that we recovered from being shot at. Had a windshield shot out in my face. It's a laminated field, so the windshield sagged in, and the inner layer shattered, and I was a bloody mess with all the particles that drove into my hands and in my face. When we got back, our flight surgeon looked at me and said, "Dick, you want a Purple Heart?" And at the time, I'm thinking guys that lost an arm, a leg, and so on. I said, "No, Doc, just pull out all the shards of glass and wipe my face down with antiseptic, and I'll be okay." He says, "Good, that'll save me the paperwork." We had squadron reunions for a while after the war, and we renewed acquaintances with them, but the we haven't had them in over 10 years now, and every time I would hear another 2 or 3 had died.